Good afternoon and welcome to our Facebook Live. I'm very excited to be sitting here with my friend Marlain Polovin. The two of us met on a retreat. We were both at Hoogland Health Hydro and met on a hike, and I think just realized that there was much that we could talk about and share. And Marlain is an expert in many things, but in today's conversation we're going to talk about the Enneagram. And I would love you to post any questions. If we can't answer them now on the chat, we will reply in the comments after the show. But Marlain, can we just start by you sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then getting into this very exciting field of personality understanding?
Thanks so much, Hayley. Yes, indeed. It's really great to be here with you today. So a little bit about what I do. So I'm quite multifaceted, but essentially I head up organizational development for an IT retail company. And on the other hand, I also have my own practice as an executive coach, an Enneagram teacher, and a facilitator of team effectiveness and leadership effectiveness. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. I'm very passionate about the Enneagram specifically, and had the pleasure of working with Riso-Hudson, who's recognized as the world expert on the Enneagram, and I've done many of his courses both in South Africa and internationally.
Wow. So tell us, what is the Enneagram, Marlain, and how does it differ from other kind of personality archetype assessments?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I'm going to try and keep it simple because it's very, very multifaceted.
Yeah.
So firstly, the word Enneagram, it comes from two Greek words, Ennea being 9 and gram being something that's written down.
Okay.
And it links to the Enneagram symbol, a 9-pointed symbol, and really looks at 9 key archetypes of personality. And I think the real benefit of the Enneagram is it doesn't necessarily focus on our behaviors, but it really goes much deeper, and it looks at what are our core motivations? What are the core motivations of why we do certain things? And often those are rooted in how we learned our survival techniques as children growing up. And it looks at our core motivations, as I've said, and our basic fears and our basic desires, which are some of the key drivers behind our Enneagram type.
Wow. So essentially, I mean, how it works, maybe you can just take us through that. Is it a whole set of questionnaires? Do you work with an expert who guides you? And are you born this way, or is it something that we become? I think I've got so many questions. Does it change? How do you know what your number is? I did it many years ago. I remember when I was working for HFPA, there was an intro course on it, and I know my number that I'll share with you maybe, but it would also be fascinating maybe for you to tell us what the 9 archetypes are to start, and then how you would figure that out for yourself.
Okay, so that was a lot of questions.
It was a lot of questions.
So let me talk about the 9 types.
Okay.
So essentially the 9 types of the Enneagram, it goes according to number 1 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 is the archetype of the strict perfectionist. 2 is known as the helper, 3, the competitive achiever, 4, the individualist, 5, the investigator, 6, the loyal skeptic, and 7, the enthusiastic visionary, 8, the challenger, and 9, the peacemaker. So those are the broad archetypes.
Okay.
And in the course that I offer, I go into a lot more detail about what those archetypes mean, because obviously that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And are you only one archetype, or could you have multiple archetypes, or is it just predominantly you are that?
So that's a really great question, because with all the Enneagram types, there's often aspects of the different types that we identify with, and that's absolutely fine within the context of the Enneagram. It is a very dynamic tool. If you think about the Enneagram symbol, it's a pity we don't have a picture of it here to depict, but there is a number of lines within the Enneagram symbol. And those lines that connect to our Enneagram type are very important because we move between these lines, and we are also strongly influenced by the Enneagram type that is on either side of our dominant type. But to go back to your original question, we all have one home base of an Enneagram type. And often people will say, well, there's I changed within that. And that is true because there are 9 levels of health and 9 levels of development. And as we evolve in our growth and our journey in the Enneagram, we can move up the levels of development, ideally, and sometimes even drop down. So just to consolidate that response, we do have a core type and we experience growth or stress within that type.
Right. No, you're making me think back to a conversation that we had because, the symbol that I have in mind is something like a star almost, where you have on either side, as you say, the lines. And my number that I identified, that I remember, was a 6, which you say is the skeptic.
The loyal skeptic.
The loyal skeptic.
Yeah.
But I also identify with sometimes the hermit archetype and then the visionary as well, which are on either side of the 6. It's the 5 and the 7, if I'm not mistaken. And then on I think what you call wings are the 3 and the 9 as well that come into balance. Or am I completely...
No, that's almost there. So absolutely. So as a 6, a loyal skeptic, you would be influenced by the wing of the 7 and the wing of the 5. And, ideally in our journey with the Enneagram, we want to integrate both those wings. Like a bird doesn't fly lopsidedly, but, to access the gifts of the wing types is really useful. What's very interesting about you identifying as a 6 is you would also certainly relate to aspects of the peacemaker and aspects potentially of the 3, which is the competitive achiever.
Okay.
So it's a very, very...
Quite spot on, eh?
Sure, great.
Really spot on.
Yeah. So that's really very interesting because it is a very dynamic system. So I'm not surprised that you do relate to those aspects. However, 6 is your home base, and there'll probably be the factors like the basic fear and the basic desire and the key motivations of the 6 that you do relate to. And the 6 is, as each Enneagram type in a triad, which is 3 types without getting too technical, is underpinned by 5, 6, and 7 is underpinned by emotion of fear. And 8, 9, and 1 is underpinned by an emotion of anger. And 2, 3, and 4 is underpinned by the heart center, and an emotion of shame.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm even just thinking about what you're saying with the 3 and the 6. The competitiveness side of me comes out only in specific times. I think when I'm playing tennis, I'm a completely different personality to when I'm here teaching yoga. Then I'm, all the peacemaker, but it's like 2 complete different personalities that come out. And I'm just thinking, Marlain, as a well-trained professional in this, can you identify, generally, if you spend enough time talking to someone, do you have kind of a hunch on what their personality type might be, or do they have to do an assessment with you?
So that's such an interesting question, because what's very different about the Enneagram compared to other assessment tools is it's actually not necessarily about a person's behavior. It's about what is their core motivation that is actually driving them. What is their basic fear, their basic desire? So I wouldn't work with a hunch, but what I would do is I would ask a series of questions moving around the Enneagram 9 types to see what a person resonates with. And then there would be an opportunity to go a little bit deeper. But I don't really work on a hunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is an exploration.
Yes, there is an exploration. And, people often say, well, how can I find my type? And
yes, how?
My recommendation is, firstly, there are 2 ways. You can complete a validated questionnaire, And I work with the IEQ, which is an integrated Enneagram questionnaire, which I found really, really valid. I use it in my coaching practice. I use it in my team effectiveness practice. And it's a highly validated tool. The other way is that one does some reading around the types, and a really good book to start with is The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Riso-Hudson, and it's actually got a couple of questions right in the front, which helps put you on the path, and then working on what really resonates with me from what I'm reading, and then to potentially watch a couple of YouTubes of people being interviewed on their different Enneagram types, and then if one's interest is really piqued, taking it a little bit further, maybe doing an Enneagram course, working with an Enneagram coach, or doing one's own exploration.
Well, that's fantastic. And I know we've been speaking about wanting to have a workshop here at the studio. We're hopefully going to plan one for a few weeks' time. So if anyone is interested, please put a thumbs up and like this page, and we will send you an invitation on that. Dates to be confirmed, because I think there's so much to learn and explore, and you just make me excited talking about it.
I get very excited talking about it too. It's a deep passion of mine.
Deep passion.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can imagine, and how knowing different people's archetypes, whether it's in your own family or in relationships and professionally as well. I think if you can identify who is who at your office or your workplace, maybe you can speak to them differently, appreciate them differently. How have you found that in your practice and your training?
Yeah, that's such a powerful question. So certainly on an individual level, when using the Enneagram in my coaching practice, I think it's enabled people, whoever I'm coaching, to get a real deep insight into their strengths, their weaknesses, their blind spots, and where they are in terms of their level of development, and then putting processes and practices in place to move them up their level of development. And from a team perspective, what's really useful is when a whole team does their Enneagram type, and there's a deeper understanding of the different Enneagram types, their strengths, what they bring to the team, and then looking at what the overall type is of the team, which then gives a lot of indications of areas where the team might need to give very specific attention. I think it also enables teams to have greater compassion when I understand what is your motivation as a 6, the loyal skeptic. There's often some angst that's lying underneath that. And, what 6s bring to the table is they're incredible devil's advocates. They'll do a lot of the what ifs, which really brings a lot of value into an organization. So each type has got such huge value that they bring to the team. So when the team understands that, it's really a positive aspect to capitalize on that. And, I think it brings a lot of team cohesion. In addition to relationships, if I understand what my partner's Enneagram type is and my partner understands what my Enneagram type is, we understand each other a lot better. I'll give you a simple example. An Enneagram type 2, which is the helper, they have a real need to be helpful, to be loved, and to be needed. So it's a heartfelt Enneagram type with a lot of feeling as the emotion underneath it, married to an Enneagram 5, which is in the thinking center. So Enneagram type 5s, they are the investigators. So they like to really go in depth. They like to understand, and they also like to preserve their energy. So for a type 2 and type 5 to understand the core motivation of each of them, they will appreciate that. So maybe the 2 might, before understanding, feel a little bit rejected by the 5. And now there's that deeper understanding, and the 5 might understand the type 2 is being helpful. There's need to be needed, and what adaptations can I make in that regard. And in fact, the IEQ offers a compatibility report, which is a very, very powerful tool as well.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That really is incredible, and it makes so much sense. I mean, I'm just kind of processing and thinking in my own kind of family dynamics, how that interplay would be very, very useful to know. I mean, for example, my mother-in-law definitely likes to be the helper.
Yes.
And my husband, I think, is a peacemaker, but there's sometimes a conflict between the two. Even though he's the peacemaker, sometimes, the over-helpfulness is not so helpful.
Yes.
And it's also the perfectionists, I think, also it's important to appreciate a perfectionist, because sometimes, they would probably be very loyal employees and good employees, but also there's sometimes, discord. So
some edges there.
Some edges. And that was actually another question of mine, is what has been your greatest, I think, growth edge since you started working with the Enneagram? How have you changed or grown out of the knowledge that you have?
Yeah, such a brilliant question. So it's been a very, very long journey for me. And I think understanding my Enneagram type has really just made me understand my core motivation so much better. So I identify with the type 3, the competitive achiever.
Okay.
And I think what's really been useful for me is to recognize when I'm becoming more of the human doing, which is one of the traps for the Enneagram 3, than the human being. And always catching myself, bringing my heart back into my engagements, into my way of being, and recognizing, when I might be dropping down the level and becoming too workaholic orientated, and what's that meaning for me, and then just pulling myself back. So my real journey is towards integrating towards type 6, which, is really much more team orientated, and, about the team and bringing balance in that regard. So those are some of my learnings. I think the whole journey for me has been really, really massive. And I've also recognized, when I'm functioning at my healthiest level, most of us actually function at our average level.
Okay.
And how we know that is, when am I triggered? I get that email which triggers me, and, maybe it drops me down, and then maybe that's when I start recognizing I've been triggered, and noticing what's happening for me. So I think what's also really helped me is being able to self-reflect and catch myself a lot more in the moment when I'm getting caught up into that strong achievement drive, which might not be serving me that well, holistically.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of positive aspects of the type, but there's also knowing your negatives, which can be very helpful, as you say, knowing your triggers. And when you do feel, they're welling up inside of you, I guess it's just pausing and recognizing them as, okay, this is who I am, and, thinking about it more logically than getting cross with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the big things with the Enneagram is when we start recognizing, am I functioning at a healthy, average, or unhealthy level? It's almost a little bit like a funnel, and the funnel sort of starts narrowing down as we go down the levels of development. And as we start putting our growth practices in place and start becoming a lot more conscious of our triggers, the funnel sort of widens up, and we have a lot more freedom of choice, rather than being caught up in our automatic responses. And, that famous Viktor Frankl saying, between stimulus and response, there lies a window of opportunity, and within that window of opportunity is our freedom of choice and our freedom to grow.
Wow, Marlain, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So, we're talking about hosting a workshop here. Can you maybe unpack what that would look like if we had to do a session? How long would it be? What can people anticipate? Maybe just walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it would consist of an orientation session, and I'd really be looking at touching on each of the Enneagram types, giving a little bit of a thumbprint overview of what each type is about, understanding the basic fear, the basic desire, the core motivation, talking a little bit about the type, how the type responds when under stress and when they move towards their growth point, talking about the levels of development. and also giving participants the opportunity to maybe start understanding the type that they relate to the most. I'd give the opportunity to do a very broad questionnaire, which would help identify maybe 3 possible types and really just provoke future reflection. My intention is to expand that offering to a 10-week, more in-depth Enneagram training and opportunity incorporating a coaching opportunity and a learning opportunity of the Enneagram for those that want to go deeper into it.
It sounds incredible. I know when we first spoke about this on one of our hikes, I was saying to Marlain that I'd love her to do an online course and training that maybe would be a hybrid and online lessons, and we could get it, potentially accredited as a certified course for people to be able to offer the Enneagram coaching themselves. And if this is something, again, that you would be interested in, please indicate it to us. And don't forget that we have other courses on Keep Evolving. We've got a fantastic mindfulness teacher training program, some yoga courses, nutrition, hormone health. So check it out and watch the space. And what else can I say? Marlain, it's been an absolute pleasure just having a quick chat about all of this, and lovely to see you again and here.
Thank you so much, Hayley. Lovely to see you, and I loved your questions. They were thought-provoking, and there's so much more to the Enneagram, but I think, we've given a taster, so thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.